When I originally started making mythology content, I said there were a couple myths that I wasn't going to talk about because I eventually wanted to write novels. One of those being Persephone, Hades, and Demeter. But here's where I have to confess that I am not a well read individual, though I like to give off the appearance of being one, because I was not aware that there's already a plethora of novels out there that are retellings of that mythology and retellings that shape Persephone and Demeter's relationship as enmeshed, and Hades and Persephone as a consensual relationship. Now, I want to talk about why I was drawn to writing a retelling of this to show people why these retellings mean so much to certain people. And retelling does not mean we are trying to shoehorn this into the second Homeric hymn to Demeter. It does not mean we're trying to put it in the footnotes of, Homer or something. It just means that we are playing with this mythology in a way that examines the human experience, which is something that people have been doing since ancient times. Look at any of the tragedies. So, first, let's talk about the pairing of Persephone and Hades being consensual. I love the trope of enmeshed golden child and bad boy with a heart of gold. It's why, if you were to ask me who is my favorite canon boyfriend for Rory Gilmore, I say Jess. It's because that's the pairing I have in my own life. And what I can say as a former enmeshed golden child is that bad boys don't follow the rules. That's their whole appeal, right? And we have been following a set of rules and expectations that don't align with reality at all, but we have been too afraid to question our entire lives. So when we have this guy in front of us who isn't afraid of breaking rules, but still comes from a good place and we can see is a genuinely good person, it shows us that it's okay to break free. It's okay to do things that your parents wouldn't approve of, that Jesus and God wouldn't approve of if you happen to have religious trauma mixed in like I do. Which brings me to my next point. A lot of people do not like this retelling and say that it can't be a feminist retelling because painting Demeter as villainous is inherently unfeminist. Mother-daughter relationships are some of the hardest relationships there are out there. That's one of the first things my therapist said to me when I started going to her for my enmeshment trauma. And going back to Gilmore Girls, the whole story is driven by challenging mother-daughter relationships. Emily and Lorelai, Lorelai and Rory, Lane and Mrs. Kim. There's probably more shoehorned in there that are lesser plots, but you get what I'm saying. These mother-daughter relationships are not inherently unfeminist because they're not always painted in a positive light. But as somebody who had an overbearing mom myself, and one who I would say enforces patriarchy through her religious expectations of me, I feel like I have more agency, more ownership over my own body. I literally have gotten 3 tattoos since I went no contact. And I was afraid, actually 4. I've gotten 4 tattoos since I went no contact. And I was afraid to do any tattoos at all because of things that she would say about my body being a temple and the fact that I didn't get any privacy. And I was afraid of her seeing it. I went viral on TikTok for telling a story about being afraid of her seeing my tattoo because I was changing in front of her. So, my mom was an agent of patriarchy in my life, and I am a more self-reliant and independent woman since being away from her. Well, I'm also unemployed right now, but that is also me breaking free from expectations because I needed to fail once in my life and see that I am okay after I fail and I can pick myself back up. I'm still picking myself back up and I'm gonna cry if I talk about it too much, but being enmeshed made this process of picking myself up so much harder, which is why it's nice to have that bad boy with the heart of gold backing me and making me laugh and making me feel like I can do this and that everything's gonna be okay in the end because he's got me. So, all of that projection is to say that literature, TV shows, movies, they all exist so that we can examine our human experience. And it may not be your cup of tea when people talk about certain experiences. You don't have to read it. You don't have to cite it in your essays. Nobody is saying it is a part of what the ancient Greeks and Romans believed. Although, and I know people hate this argument, a lot of these things were an oral tradition. We don't know every myth that was out there. And we only have a fraction of what was written down, even. So, they could have believed this back then too. We don't know. And that is an uncertainty that you all have to live with now. But people like these because it speaks to a part of their own experience that they need to examine, that they need to reflect on, and that they need to reflect on in a way that feels safe. Literature, entertainment, it just does that for us. So be a little nicer to people. You don't have to accept it in your reality, in your canon. If you're a Hellenistic polytheist, you don't have to believe them as part of the pantheon. But some people need these things, me being one of them, okay?